I live for you because you died for me. I might fight some battles, but you won the war, yeah. My soul will stop running, and you walk across the water. Wherever you call me. So keep deeper than my feet has gone, and my faith is getting stronger. And you my spirit.
It is finished. At that moment, Jesus gave up his spirit. It's recorded in Matthew and Luke that a great darkness covered the land and the earth shook. But what I want to focus on is what happened at the temple at that exact moment. At that moment, the curtain in the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. I have absolutely no idea where this image came from, whether it was a movie, a sermon I watched, or if it was straight from my own imagination. But I can just imagine that the temple priests that day were doing their due diligence, preparing for the yearly sin offering that would cover the people. They felt the earth shake. Maybe they did. But they definitely heard the ripping. They would have heard the ripping of the veil in the innermost sanctum, the Holy of Holies. Even more, if the high priest was already there in the innermost sanctum, he would have actually saw the veil rip in two. Think of how powerful and terrifying that would have been. The ripping of the veil from top to bottom, is that even possible? You can't even reach up there. Let's be honest, if he was there, he probably thought he was dead. He probably thought that he was going to be burnt up and consumed, that he didn't cleanse himself properly, that the world was probably coming to an end. I mean, if I was there, that's what I would have thought. The ripping of the veil is so significant, and you might think, why? Well, to explain, I have to go back to the story of Moses and the stone tablets. Back in Exodus, Moses had led the Israelites out of Egypt. You know that whole story about the plagues and everything? If you don't know what I'm talking about, I suggest you go watch The Prince of Egypt. It's highly recommended. But God did all of that to save his people from slavery. He brought them to the mountain called Mount Sinai, where he first met Moses and gave him his mission. You know, the whole burning bush scenario. There Moses went to speak to God, and he gave them the 10 Commandments. But nobody could come up the mountain the way Moses could. This is because of the sins of the people, because they were worshiping idol gods, because they were worshiping them and turned from the actual Lord. They were unclean, they were unholy. And because of that, if they got close to even catch a glimpse of him, they would have been burnt up instantly. Sounds harsh, but think of it this way. When you put metal in fire to purify it to become pure, all the imperfections get burnt up. When you see God's glory, your soul has to be purified. And unfortunately, our humanly bodies will definitely be burnt up because of that. But God wanted a place that was pure so that he could rest his spirit amongst his people. So he was close enough to us, but we wouldn't be burnt by the mere presence of him. In Moses' time, they built a tent, which they called the Tent of Meeting. In King Solomon's time, after they entered the Holy Land, they built a permanent temple. Each time the Ark of the Covenant was placed within the walls, the Spirit of God descended into the space and flooded the halls. The people praised God He was finally somewhat close enough to us, but they wouldn't go inside. They couldn't go inside because his presence was too strong. We know that God had appointed specific people to attend to the tent and the temple. And even then, those people needed to be cleansed. They needed to be cleaned themselves to get close to God. And if they didn't clean themselves properly or they mishandled the offering, they would have been burnt up instantly. God even said, "Among those who approach me, I will be proven holy. In the sight of all the people, I will be honored." So coming back to the veil, the priest would have definitely thought he was about to be consumed by fire like those before him. Because, why else would the veil rip? When Jesus gave up his spirit, he was the sacrificial lamb the priest was going to sacrifice to the people. But God took the sacrifice of his son instead to cleanse everybody for eternity. His blood cleansed us so much that immediately the veil that had kept God's presence within holy walls ripped, leaving it exposed for anybody and everybody to see. I can literally picture it now, the ripping of the veil and God's presence just stepping out from that place, just looking for new holy vessels to just descend upon, just waiting for the day in Acts where he was able to give his spirit freely to the disciples. The actual painting that you're seeing is heaven, New Jerusalem. When I first saw this image, the Lord said it was Zion. This is the place where God and the Lamb will rule over his people. It's streets of gold and river of life that flows directly from the throne of God, with the trees of life ascended in the back, as you can see. Thank you, Lord. His name is so powerful, it's so insane. When I first saw this image, it was during worship last year, February. And these were the words that I heard associated with it. You cannot see the Lord with your natural eyes, only with the eyes of your mind. As you, in your human body, would be burnt up, your soul made clean and pure through my Son will be able to see. Your soul, heart, and mind connected as one in your imagination can see. Zion, the streets of gold, river flowing through the center of the streets, houses on hills made of gold. To me, that just reaffirms everything I had just said previously, but maybe for you, you would hear something different. But that is what this painting is. One day, I hope I can make this painting into a mural. It needs a bigger stage. It's called Kingdom Vision, alluding to the fact that you need to drop your old ways of seeing and pick up God's vision and thinking. Because how can you judge what a man is worth by what he builds or buys? You can never see with your eyes on earth. Look through heaven's eyes. Look at your life through heaven's eyes.